This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so now we are uh, getting ready to start, and I know a few more people will be trickling in as it goes on, but we're going to devote basically the first 20 minutes to Rip, then 20 minutes to Patrick, and then we'll talk about the bond referenda. And the um, the other things to report is that we have still a heavy positive test result in Arlington for the COVID virus, and I understand from press reports it's predominantly the Delta variant, which is very contagious. So again, we're continuing to just put off our in-person return date. Okay, so it's now my honor to introduce Delegate Rip Sullivan, who represents the city, the area around McLean and the westernmost precincts of Arlington, which you know sort of goes along Glebe Road up toward Chain of Rocks Bridge, basically that area. And Rip has been a leader in the House Delegate Caucus and has been very active in recruiting candidates and moving us along on keeping our majority. And it's my great honor and pleasure to give you Rip Sullivan.
Thank you, Bob. It's really nice to be with you. And Bob, thank you for accommodating my schedule. I think I've probably said to this group before, one of the hardest things about being elected to the General Assembly is learning how to be in 2 or even 3 places at once. And it can be a real challenge. Although candidly, COVID makes it a little easier, or at least Zoom calls makes it a little easier because you can go from one meeting to the next with no commute time. So I appreciate it. Bob accommodated, let me move my schedule around a little bit so I could be with a different group later in this hour. So all familiar faces. It's great to see you all again. I hope that I don't need to tell you more than Bob already has about me and my district and that sort of thing. The last session is now long enough ago, and we've talked about it in a variety of different fora that I don't feel as if I need to go through all the wonderful things that we've accomplished in the last couple of years, unless obviously I'll want to talk about it, and I'm certainly inclined to turn this into much more of a Q&A than anything else. So I am happy to delve into all sorts of detail about the fabulous things that the Democratic majority in the House of Delegates and the Senate, along with Governor Northam, have accomplished in the last 2 sessions of the General Assembly. I think I'll just use that as my springboard to say we've been enormously successful. We have advanced the ball on a long list of progressive items, with a lot of pent up demand, as it were, over the course, developed over the course of the last 20 years, things we couldn't get done, which suddenly we could get done, and in the space of 2 sessions, I just think we've transformed the Commonwealth of Virginia. The other side, of course, thinks we've destroyed the Commonwealth of Virginia, and they are very eager to undo everything we have done. So my segue here is we've done some remarkable, historic, transformative things, but it could all go poof by, I don't know, let's say midnight on November 2nd if we don't get our act together over the course of the next, whatever that adds up to, 7 weeks, I guess, that are left to us before Election Day. My observations, both as from my perch as a former campaign chair, I think everyone here knows that I was the campaign chair for the last 2 cycles when we got from 34 to 55, and as Bob mentioned, recruited a lot of these candidates, or helped recruit all these candidates. And there's a little piece of me that I look at a lot of them as kind of my children. Some of them, of course, could be my children in terms of their age demographic. But I'm just enormously proud of the folks who've been elected during the last 2 cycles. But from both that perch and my current perch as caucus chair, where frankly my involvement in the campaigns hasn't lessened any. It's just from a different sort of bureaucratic spot. I can tell you that the enthusiasm gap that people talk about is real. Democrats have a very annoying, that's not strong enough, actually, dangerous, put it that way, tendency to win and then sort of, say, okay, mission accomplished. Last year we took the White House back. We kicked out Trump. We installed President Biden, Vice President Harris. We took the Senate in a little bit of a last-second miracle. Gee, mission accomplished. Let's go about our lives and sort of forget about the next crucial step, which is to consolidate our gains and to make sure that we protect what we've won. Because if we don't, I will tell you, the other side's been not even subtle about their plan to undo everything we've done. I tell people that I have discovered the 3 most frightening words in the English language from my perspective, and those are Speaker Todd Gilbert, followed closely by, of course, Governor Glenn Youngkin. And if they were to get back the majority and the levers of power, the very first thing they would do would be to repeal all of the election reforms we've put in, making it easier to vote in Virginia. As we all know, early voting starts this week. They hate that because what does that mean? That means more people vote. That's bad for them, good for us. So they would repeal that, and all the things we've done with voter ID, that stuff would all be gone. Next, they would repeal all of the gun safety laws that we've put on the books. You all remember that we passed sort of 6 of Governor Northam's suite of 7 bills on that in the gun safety space, one of which was my red flag bill, which I would tell you parenthetically is working. It's been used, I think, close to 200 times in the Commonwealth since it's become law last July, or I guess 2 Julys ago. And in places, ironically enough, and interestingly enough, in places that have declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuary jurisdictions, right? These places that say, oh, Second Amendment, this red flag law is anathema. When it comes to actually trying to save people's lives, whether that's friends or family or neighbors, it's being used. And I'm grateful that it has been. So that'd be the second thing they do. They would repeal all the criminal justice reform things we've done. Frankly, I think they would reinstate the death penalty. They would next move on to repealing. I think they'd do, they'd freeze the minimum wage where it is now, as opposed to what we have planned for it over the course of the next couple of years. They would roll back all of the LGBT stuff we've done. They'd roll back all of the criminal justice reform things we've done, and without doubt, they would introduce and pass a Texas style abortion bill. And anyone who thinks that can't happen in Virginia, should the Republicans take control, is simply wrong. I could rattle off the 5 or 6 members who would arm wrestle one another to put in that bill on the Republican side, and I believe they'd have the votes to pass that bill on the Republican side if they were to get the majority. So everything we've done in the last 2 years since winning the majority is at stake on November 2nd. And I just think my message to you all today is, and I'll probably be a bit of a broken record about this, is that we collectively have to do everything we possibly can and everything we can think of, things we haven't even thought of yet, to get Democrats to the polls. Because, my own view is that with some exceptions in terms of races around the Commonwealth, this is not a persuasion election. I joke, but this is only partially a joke. I believe there are about 17 undecided voters in Virginia right now. We are, for better or for worse at the moment, we are deeply stuck in our corners, which long term is something we need to work on. But for purposes of the next 7 weeks, that's what the state of play is, as far as I'm concerned. And this is not a persuasion election unless you're talking about persuading Democrats to vote, because too many of them feel as if we've already won. Too many of them feel as if the majority, well, we've got a 10-vote majority in the House of Delegates, so what's there to worry about? And Biden won by 10 points, so what is there to worry about? The answer is there's a lot to worry about. The Republicans are where we were when we wanted the majority. They are eager to win it back. The world has changed. We have, Trump is gone. Although, as we all know, he's sort of lurking out there, but he is gone, and that's got some Democrats feeling more comfortable. So we just need to fight back against this enthusiasm gap and get our people to the polls. I have every confidence. I know, as sure as I know the sun's going to come up tomorrow, that if we show up, we will win. And I mean that both at the statewide level. Terry will win, Hollow will win, Mark will win, and we'll retain the majority. But if we don't show up, I don't even want to end that, finish that sentence. So we just have to show up. And one last statistic I'll give you, to those who feel as if the majority is safe in the House of Delegates, because we've got 55 votes. The 6 seats that got us from 49 to 55, those 6 seats were won collectively, added all together, by less than 5,100 votes. Razor thin margins. I mean, literally, nothing quite as spectacular as Shelley Simon's tie, but Nancy Guy won by 42 votes. Josh Cole won by something like 182 votes. These are margins that, if the wrong people don't show up and vote on November 2nd, things could get scary. It just could not be more important that our people show up. And by the way, speaking of scary, I'll just give everyone a warning. I believe election night will be kind of scary, if only because Fairfax, as it always does, will come in late. And that will, of course, make the numbers look kind of scary until Fairfax weighs in with its hundreds of thousands of Democratic votes. I have no doubt that Patrick and my phone's going to start ringing off the hook somewhere around, I don't know, 8 or 9 p.m. with people freaking out that the election is lost. But sit tight, because things will change late in the night, and I'm convinced we'll end up positively, assuming that we do our job of getting people to the polls. So, Bob, one thing I thought I would do, and then I'll take some questions. I don't want to step on Patrick's time. Is kind of identify for the group where I think the key races are, to the extent people are still looking for how to help, who to help, when to help. When to help is, by the way, in all cases answered by simply saying, this afternoon, get out there and do, start now if you haven't started already. And then, this is not particularly secret inside information I'm giving you. We know where the tight races are. Republicans have, they've taken great pleasure in issuing press releases about which races they're targeting. And there was not a single surprise among them when they issued that press release, because we already knew where they'd be headed. So The answer to that question, I mentioned Nancy Guy earlier. Hers is was the tightest race last time. It will be tight again. She's down in the 83rd down at Virginia Beach. I think we caught a little bit of a break. And again, I don't want to give anyone any sense of comfort. Nancy is a high priority target. Got a little bit of a break when the Republicans nominated Tim Anderson, who is, among other things, has filed lawsuits on behalf of Trump. He's the guy he's sued the speaker. He has sued Louise Lucas. He is a certifiable Trump acolyte, really off the deep end right wing guy. Now that doesn't guarantee us anything, but I guess all I'm suggesting is that I think he gives Nancy a real good foil. And frankly, even some of the Republicans in Virginia Beach aren't thrilled that he's the nominee. But he is. The flip side of the optimism I just expressed is if he were to pull this off and take that seat, he then becomes a member of the General Assembly and will be a big problem for us, frankly, whether we're in the majority or the minority. So we need to return Nancy Guy down in the 83rd. In the same neck of the woods, Alex Askew, this is the 85th district. Alex had a very tight race. He's a terrific new addition to the General Assembly. He had a very tight race, and that's a race that we're keeping our eye on, and we'll need to pay attention to between now and November 2nd in a big way. Rodney Willett in suburban Richmond also had a tight race. He's in the 73rd district. He's in a rematch with a woman named Mary Margaret Castleberg, who he narrowly beat the last time. So Rods is a tight race. Josh Cole, you heard me mention him earlier, won by less than a couple hundred votes. He's down in the Fredericksburg area in the 28th, and that's going to be a tight race. Closer to home, Wendy Goditis, who's in the 10th district. God bless Wendy. She's just in 2017 a fabulous addition to the caucus. She knocked off Randy Minshew, who was an established incumbent out in that neck of the woods. Had to spend a lot of money to do it. He then came back, challenged her again in 2019. She fended him off. He, fairly wealthy guy, spent a whole slew of his own money. She beat him in a tight race. This year, she's up against a guy named Nick Clementi. And if you recognize, if you know anything about real estate development in Northern Virginia, you'll recognize the last name. His grandparents are billionaire real estate developers. And he's got all the money he needs. And I predict that will be the most expensive race in the House of Delegates this year, because he's going to spend a ton of money. Wendy, by necessity, will have to respond in kind. And that's something we're working hard on to make sure that she has the resources to do that. Also closer to home, a race that is sort of a high second tier race, I guess, would be Dan Helmer's race in the 40th district. Dan won, you'll remember, the last Republican held seat in Fairfax County. And there's a reason it was the last Republican seat in Fairfax County, because it's a tight district. So that also is going to be a very expensive and close race, and I hope you all help us keep an eye on that. Two others I'll just mention to you and then take your question. Roz Tyler in the 75th. Roz has a fascinating district that's got parts of it that are very urban and parts of it that are very, very rural. The rural parts of the state are quite mobilized this year. So she's facing a tough race against a guy named Otto Waxman, and Roz is a race. Again, we're probably gonna have to be on TV soon. And then finally, our sort of one of our Western Redoubts is Chris Hurst, who's down in the Blacksburg area, who is serving, God bless him, as campaign chair this year, despite the fact that he has his own tight race. That's one where that's down in, not deep Southwest Virginia, but certainly well into Southwest, the Roanoke, Blacksburg area. And that's a seat we simply have to keep. And Chris is working really, really hard. So those are, I forget what I just rattled off, 6 or 8 of the sort of highlight pinch point races that I hope everyone here will keep an eye on and help out if you can. I'll just close by saying that, of course, the caucus has an entire operation of staff, and we're supporting all these candidates, and frankly, every other candidate. We're running in well north of 90 races around the Commonwealth, and we're busy raising money. I'm busy raising money. Patrick's busy raising money, making sure that the caucus has the resources it needs. Because one thing I know for sure is that I don't know right now precisely when and where something will happen that will require some, let's just call it last minute pivoting somewhere. Someone will need to go up on television because the other side does. Someone will need to suddenly get some paid door knockers because the other side has. And we're working hard to make sure that the caucus has the flexibility, which is code for money, to be ready to help our colleagues when and where they need it, or to deploy folks like you to get on the phone or write more letters or go knock more doors for us. So it's going to be a jam-packed next 7 weeks. It's all about execution. As I said, it's all about persuading Democrats that they have to remember to vote. And that's my job and Patrick's job, and I hope some of you or all of you will take that on as your job until the polls close on November 2nd to help us do that. Because when we do it, we will win. We will win.
Thank you for that overview. You rattled off a parade of horribles, which I think is very important sales technique to the undecided or to motivate people to turn out. One thing that I noticed when I moved to Virginia, the general legislature was sort of a wholly owned subsidiary of R.J. Reynolds, and it's turned around completely. And in the last session, you all empowered condo associations to ban smoking in their buildings and their units. And in fact, my condo is in the process of doing that, I'm proud to report. But I do think that smoking and health is as an important issue as the others that you've listed that are at stake.
Yeah,
are there any other questions for Rip? Who wants to ask a question?
I have.
Go ahead, Herschel.
Are there any districts where we have a chance of defeating incumbents? Could you mention a couple of those?
Great point. Thank you, Herschel, for reminding me. Priority 1 is protecting all of our members, but priority 1A, of course, is continuing to try to expand our majority. And the answer to that is yes, Herschel. We have several really good possible pickup opportunities. Probably number 1 there is in the seat that former Speaker Kirk Cox is vacating down in the Chesterfield area. And we have a candidate there named Katie Sponsler who's running a good race. And just the structure of that district just to say skews our way. Cox was able to protect it because he was Kirk Cox and he'd been there for 30 years and he was a comfortable old shoe for a lot of those voters. But that is now an open seat, and we feel pretty good about the possibility of winning that race. We have another race at the beach. A candidate named Kim Melnick is running against Glenn Davis, and we think that's a really good pickup opportunity. And I would say the third other real good pickup opportunity is going to be the seat currently held by Roxanne Robinson. And I'm having a senior moment, if I can call it that, with this group. I'm trying to remember our candidate's name running against Roxanne, but that's a race we're also focusing on as a pickup. There are a variety of others. Doc Feld down in the Northern Neck. That's a seat that it sort of is always close. Rob Bloxham, the current incumbent, is not a particularly energetic incumbent. Sort of relies on name ID and longevity. But that's a race that we think is really possible.
Other questions for Rip?
I have a question.
Joan?
I'd like to ask you, Rip, to tell this group about House Bill 1856 from last year that passed almost unanimously in the House, and then the Senate didn't even consider it. So I'm not sure this group knows about that bill.
I'm sure I do, Joan. Which one was 1856? That describes several bills.
Okay, it's on the electronic signatures.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah, you and I talked about that.
Right.
So this was a bill. I carried this bill. Was happy to do so. And you're right, Joan. It sort of flew through the House. It had to do with it's called the Uniform Electronic Wills Act. And the pandemic had sort of shined a spotlight on the difficulties of getting a will signed remotely. Although candidly, even absent the pandemic, a lot of states have realized, that we're in the 21st century, and there are other ways to sign documents that don't require everyone to be in the same room, or for that matter, in the same town or state even. The House Courts Committee, and we passed it on the floor. I guess what I would tell you, Joan, is when it got to the Senate Courts Committee, the lawyers on that committee, which I guess is everyone on that committee, do what sometimes lawyers do, which is come up with all sorts of scenarios, real but mostly imagined. The sort of what ifs. Oh my goodness, what if what if there's a ghost in the room, or what if a meteorite hits? Sort of really crazy scenarios. And some less crazy. But for instance, I mean, literally, what if someone's on camera, you're doing it by video, and there's someone off screen, holding a gun to someone's head, this kind of stuff. And they just they frankly raised enough questions to give at least enough of them pause to kill the bill in committee. They have asked what's called the Boyd Graves Conference, which is a group of I don't know what to call them, well-known, accomplished lawyers that get together and think heavy thoughts and think through bills like this and give their recommendation to the General Assembly. I'm hoping they're going to come back with a positive response. It is called the Uniform Electronic Wills Act, and what that means is that it was created by a commission that studies laws nationally and suggests to states laws that all the states should pass that look either identical or close to identical, the most famous being the Uniform Commercial Code. So it's not like I made this up or the State Bar Elder Law section made this up. This is something that's been vetted by a nationally renowned organization and passed in a variety of other states. So we're not trying to be the first to do anything in this. So I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to bring that back and get that done, because pandemic or no, it's a good idea.
And I brought it up just because I'm involved with a group called the Coalition for Improved Advanced Care, and it would also be appropriate for advanced directives. Could be this way too. So, and we are the senior Democrats here meeting today. So.
Yep, indeed.
Thank you, Rip. We'll follow it in the 22 session.
Thanks, Joan. Good
One
question,
of our
Derek.
younger members is Derek Mattis. So why don't we let Derek ask a question?
Can you hear me?
We got you, Derek.
Okay, Rip, a quick, just a real quick story, and I think it's kind of a problem. I recently purchased a late model vehicle, and my experience with DMV was a saga. It took me probably at least 6 weeks to get title, licensed, and I mean, the nightmare started in early July. I tried to make an appointment. The appointment was the earliest appointment I could get here at the 4 Mile Run DMV was like 4 or so weeks out. I said, well, this is crazy. We're trying to leave on vacation. Let me mail the stuff in. Big mistake. My appointment came and went. I'm now well into August, panicking that I'm not going to be able to drive this vehicle. Finally, I called Alfonso, and Alfonso pulled some strings, and in a couple of days, I think I got contacted by the commissioner of the DMV. I ended up getting some temporary tags, and within a couple of days, some other tags. So that was part of it. Then I tried to sell my vehicle. Fortunately for me, the person I bought it from, I knew he trusted me with his tag, so I could use my vehicle. But I sold my vehicle on Facebook Marketplace, and the guy had, I couldn't let him use my tags. So the car sat for almost a month in front of my house, and he could not drive it. I numerous phone calls to DMV. They had told me they're understaffed. I will give them credit. I rarely could get to them by phone, but they did respond to my emails with a phone call. But I mean, what a huge, huge inconvenience for people trying to title a vehicle.
Yeah, I guess the moral of that story is call Alfonso, right? I'm glad
It worked for me.
yeah, I'm glad and not surprised he was able to help you out with that. The DMV is just, you're right, Derek. The stories are legion. All, of course, made worse by the pandemic. One of the things we did do when we were back in special session was to require of the commissioner to come up with a plan to get DMVs back open again for in-person use. But then, of course, the stories just shift to all sorts of stories about how long people have to wait in line at the DMV as opposed to wait for email responses. But it's
better an hour at DMV than 6 or 7 weeks, waiting for mail.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's something we really want to do is get them back open.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just two words. Deborah Gardner, was that the other?
Yes.
possible
Thank
clip?
you. Yep. Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah. Rip, I know you have another engagement. Do you just want to spend a minute concluding?
Sure. Well, thank you. It really is great to see all these friends on the line here. I promised you at the beginning I was going to be a broken record, and I will be. This is all about showing up. For those of you in the 48th, I would point out, for the record, I have an opponent this year, so I'd appreciate your votes. My time has typically been spent. It's always been my MO to raise money for others, to make to increase our numbers in the General Assembly, and to spend my time helping others to increase our numbers in the General Assembly. I'm sure this is part of the Republican plan, as I've had to spend a little bit of time and money on making sure that I take care of the home fires and make sure that I get sent back to Richmond, which I'm eager to have happen. But the reality is I'm actually just doing both. I'm spending some time and money making sure I win the 48th, and then continuing to help make sure folks like Deborah Gardner, Stuart, have the resources that they need to make sure we have the Democratic majority going forward, because it's sort of indescribably important. But if you live in the 48th, I'd appreciate your vote on November 2nd.
Thank you.
And if you want to meet in person, by the way, I have an event next Thursday night Matt DeFerranti and Brooke have been nice enough to open their home to me. And so next Thursday, I have an event at Matt's house, and we can carry on this conversation then if you'd like to come. Don Beyer will be there to talk about what's going on nationally.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Our next guest
would appreciate their vote in a week or so.
Oh, that's true. It doesn't have to be on November 2nd. Good point, Herschel. Get out there and get it over with.
Our next guest is Patrick Hope, who represents sort of the middle part of Arlington. And Patrick is I won't even dare say how long he's been in the Assembly. He's our longest serving House of Delegate member. And we'll turn it over to Patrick.
Sure. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. And I just was amused by your proximity to your refrigerator and how convenient it is for you to get in and out of your freezer so easily. So that's a nice move. So anyway, thank you for having me. It's good to see everyone. I do have a hard stop at 1, so I'll be out of your hair by then. But I'm running for my 7th term, believe it or not. And I just remember, it feels like yesterday when I was running in a primary in 2009. And so it's, but it is quite a difference between spending my first 10 years in the minority and now these last 2 years being in the majority. And I won't dare to repeat all the things that Rip talked about of all the great progress that we made over the last couple of years. I do have a Republican opponent that, of course, just like everyone else, we're taking it seriously, but we do want to make sure that we win our statewide ticket with Terry McAuliffe at the top and Hala Yala and Mark Herring, and we keep the House of Delegates, because it's really important that we maintain what we have. And I think 2 issues are starting to resonate with a lot of voters. This is the first time since we've had the majority that we've had to defend our seats with Trump out of the White House. And so it's a different feeling to it. I've knocked on, and I'm a big believer in knocking on doors, and I've done it every single year that I've been in office, with one exception was COVID last year. And but I knock on at least 1,000 doors every year, and 1,500 or more when I'm up for election. And this year's not any different. I've knocked on over 800 doors since the summer, which has been really hard, 800 doors, because it's been exceedingly hot. Or else I'm just getting older. I don't know what it is, but it's both, I'm sure. And so so that makes it a little bit difficult. But I know that the weather is going to get even better, and so I'll do at least 1,500 doors. But the reason why I say that to you is because I'm knocking on, of course, I'm knocking on Democrats' doors, but I'm also knocking on independents and lean Republican. And one of the things that I'm hearing and paying careful attention to what the independents and lean Republicans are saying is they do understand that there's this connection between Trump and Youngkin, and they're showing their support for McAuliffe. And so that's going to be really important. Now, that's not any statistical sampling at all, other than it's just what's happening in Arlington. But people are starting to make that connection. And the things that resonate and the things that we talk about the most at the doors is 2 issues. Really is the issue with choice and letting Virginians the right to choose, but what to do with their bodies, but also COVID. And COVID obviously is on everyone's mind. Abortion has crept up, mainly because of what's happening in Texas. But I won't go into all the reasons, because I heard Rip talk about the possibility that if Youngkin gets in charge, and you could get a bill to the governor and we could become Texas really quickly. But the same thing with COVID, and the governor has such a tremendous power, as we've all seen, when it comes to mandates, mask mandates and vaccine mandates. And the way that Youngkin has thought about this has been very similar to what the Republican Party has thought of, is they've said, look, we recommend you getting vaccinated, but we're not going to require you to do it. It's up to you. You should have that freedom of your choice to do that. And so I think that you'll start seeing kids without masks. I think you'll start seeing businesses not require vaccines and things like that. And so the whole reason why we're meeting virtually right now is not because of us, it's because of the unvaccinated. That's the reason why we're meeting on a screen right now, and we're not at busboys and poets, and which is a real shame. It's because of people that are unvaccinated, and you know that there is a variant out there that's waiting to develop that may be worse than what we're currently experiencing with Delta, and could break through, and you know, we may not be able to, maybe vaccine resistant. So we've got to kill this COVID now and take full advantage of that, and that will be the problem there. I just wanted to share, and that's really my observation. The other thing I would say is this: one of the things I'm observing on the doors, and I think it makes Arlington as Democrat as it is. Boy, wouldn't it be great if the rest of the state were just like Arlington? But I think one of the things is its volunteers, you know, people like you that have made the party what it is, but it's people continuing those interactions with people, because people do tend to vote for the candidate in the party that they know and that is most helpful to them. And I think it's maintaining those contacts, especially at the doors. It's maintaining those relationships. And I think if we keep doing that as a party, keep connecting with people at the doors where they are, I think that Arlington will continue to grow in its strength. And so I'm hopeful that we're going to continue to do that. I just wanted to make a couple of things that I think would be of interest to you, some issues that I'm working on during this off session when we go into session. I'm the chair of the Joint Commission on Healthcare. We're working on two issues that I think will be important to older adults and our senior Democrats. Is one, we're trying to get a good handle on the nursing home staffing shortage issue, and not just the shortage, but also the quality of care that you're receiving in nursing homes. COVID did one of those things that shined a spotlight on the problems that we're experiencing in nursing homes. So the Joint Commission on Healthcare, for those of you that know, is a very serious commission, and we're looking at these studies very independent-minded like, and we're trying to develop a pathway to fund closing that gap, that cost gap between where we think the ratio of nursing staff to patient ratio ought to be, but also those training, those high quality standards where those ought to be as well. And it's not an easy, it's a complex issue, and the complexity is mainly of how you fund a nursing home. Most nursing homes are majority funded by Medicaid, but there's some Medicare in there, and then there's some private pay in there as well. It's about 60%, 65% Medicaid, and the rest is either Medicare or private pay. And so when you're trying to put more money into the system, you know, the state can put in more money, but it may not be enough. And should Medicare be doing more, or should private pay be doing any more? So we're going to be looking at different payment options, different opportunities to fund. Virginia's in a surplus, if you haven't heard already. Our economy's doing very well. In fact, we anticipate going into the beginning of next year with about a 2.6 billion with a B surplus than what we expected. But we're also going to do some tax reform as well too. I don't believe that we necessarily need to use our surplus money for this. I think we can be doing some tax reform. I know there's some talk about taking a look at the estate tax. As you know, Virginia does not have an estate tax. And if you were just to simply line our state estate tax with the federal estate tax, just make them identical in terms of the percentage, then and what the triggering mechanism is, then we would have enough money to fund our nursing home issue. The other issue that we're focused on the Joint Commission on Healthcare is also aging in place. You know, not everyone goes to a nursing home or an assisted living facility, and that's good for a lot of people. I think there's a lot of different options in Arlington, and we want to make Arlington and every place in Virginia a place where you can grow old as to where you are. And so we'll be looking at other types of care in the community and making sure the similar questions, making sure that the staffing levels and the funding levels are the same so that we can keep high quality people to allow people to stay in their homes. I'm the vice chair of the Behavioral Health Commission. That's what we used to call the Deeds Commission, but it's a commission that's taking a look at our mental health system our behavioral health system and making sure that it's adequately funded. We've had a pretty challenging time, especially with COVID, but it didn't start just with COVID, but our crisis, our state hospitals are in a crisis when it comes to capacity. They are at capacity, even over capacity as well too. And they have some salary issues too. They have some nursing. We underpay our staff at that level pretty considerably. And so we're trying to shore that up. We're putting more funding into salaries, but also bonuses. It's a recruitment issue, but it's also a retention issue as well too. And so we're taking a look at that situation. But you know, I think it's Desmond Tutu that gets credited with talking about not pulling people out of the river, but instead going upstream to find out why they're falling in. We'll pull people out of the river, of course, but we also need to go upstream to find out why people are going into crisis in the first place. And so that requires community-based care. We need more community-based services for kids, for adults, people that are experiencing a mental health crisis, to make sure at the outset that they don't go into a crisis where they need to be hospitalized. Let's get them the community supports, the treatments that they need so they can avoid going into crisis. And that's just not there in our system. And we've got to do a lot of work to do that. And so I'm working with the Senate to make sure that we put a significant down payment down in the 2022 session. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of money go to. We had the federal money that we passed, during our special session, the ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan money. We put about $500 million of that into mental health. We're going to need to come back and continue to plug those holes and add more money to it. I think we probably have about a $2 billion problem on our hands. And so we need to make sure that we have adequate funding for those areas. So that's a big commitment. That's something that you can look forward to. And I know that in Arlington, well, actually, I should say the region, in particular, Northern Virginia region, we rely on a pilot program called RAFT, which allows people to stay in the community. Maybe they get hospitalized, they have to leave and go from a nursing home to an emergency care situation. They need to be a place to come back home to. And so RAFT also gives them the peace of mind for people that are experiencing those behavioral health issues. And so we're trying to grow that program statewide. It's been very successful here in the region. And so we want to continue to grow that. And so that's going to be a big emphasis on behavioral health, but also dementia, Alzheimer's type issues as well too. And the other issue I'll talk about is I'm also on the Substance Abuse Council. And the reason why I'm spending some time talking about these different councils and things like that, our minds are really geared toward looking at what happens during session, those month or two that were in session, and what bills passed and what didn't pass. But really, if you back up, there's a lot of work that happens before then that actually leads up to whether your bill is going to be successful or not. And some of these very weighty issues, they actually get discussed in the commission level. And that's why I'm spending some time to doing that. And so I'm also on the Substance Abuse Services Council as well too. And you've probably seen the news reports that not just Virginia, but the entire country has experienced the highest level of overdose deaths in our history. And a lot of it is fentanyl, but COVID has really, the isolation that people have experienced, people have gone to substance abuse as a way to cope. And in many cases, it's produced an addiction at all-time high, but it's also produced overdose deaths as well too. And so we've got some funding that we're putting aside towards substance abuse. You don't necessarily need to treat this much differently than a mental health issue. At the onset, when it presents itself, you have to make sure that the treatment and services are available. And when it's mental health or substance abuse, it's okay to say that you have a problem. And I think we're seeing a lot turning the corner, I would say, when it comes to the stigma and destigmatizing mental illness or substance abuse. More people are coming forward saying that they have a problem. And one of the things that I say is it is okay not to be okay. It's okay to ask for help, because that's what we need to make sure that we provide for. And so you're going to start seeing more funding in those two areas of mental health and substance abuse. We really need to get a good handle on those issues. The other thing that I'll mention, and I'll only mention it because I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee, and that's where all the gun violence prevention bills come from. There's some things that we still want to continue to be doing next year, and we're gearing up for in 2022. I'm meeting with Moms Demand Action Group tomorrow. I will be meeting with Brady and Giffords in the future, but we're putting together a plan. I know Governor McAuliffe is campaigning very hard on banning assault weapons. I expect that bill to come back in 2022. Also banning ghost guns, which ghost guns is something that we're seeing more of. It's a loophole that doesn't require a background check, and you're making a gun that has no serial number, no way to track it to find out who committed the crime. And so that's something that that you're going to see. And the last thing I'll say before I'll stop there for questions is just on this whole idea of campaigning and making sure that we elect Democrats. Rip mentioned two members that are I've been very close to. They're on the House Public Safety Committee with me. They've taken some very difficult votes. They're both in very difficult districts. They're nearby. Dan Helmer, who he mentioned, out of Fairfax, and also Josh Cole out of Stafford. I'm doing a fundraiser for them in October. I'll let you all know about it. But it's a gun violence prevention event to honor their service and to make sure it's fundraised for them so they can come back. You can imagine in these very difficult districts like they're in, their opponents are going to be making a lot of hay out of what we've been doing over the last couple of years when it comes to gun violence prevention and what we're going to continue to do. We are going to regulate assault weapons. We're going to regulate ghost guns. There's more that we're planning to do. We're going to look at militias across the state. That will be used against them. We want them to know, and Rip said this best, and I think it bears repeating, when we come out to vote, we will win. And they're going to bring out their people, and we're going to bring out our people. If we do that, they're going to prevail, just like they did last time. And that's got to be the formula to success. But they're going to need resources to make that happen. And so I'll let you all know, and hopefully you can attend the event when we do it in October for Josh and for Dan, two exceptional people that I really love and hope that they return. So let me stop there, and I'll be glad to open it up for questions, Bob. But thanks again for having me. It's good to see everyone.
Well, I think that Patrick has about 6 minutes for questions, so he can keep them crisp. Stuart, you're first.
Thanks for talking about issues for next year. One more question on the election. When I went out to canvass, there was someone, after I introduced myself, who working with the Arlington Democrats, they said not this year. And they said it's 100% schools, that they wanted the kids to be in the schools, and the fact that they hadn't always been in the schools. So how do you think these mandates and COVID mandates, are there many people like that, do you think? Or
yeah, I hear a lot about it. And it's what I say, Stuart, is I have 3 kids in public schools too, and I want them in school, and they're in school. And you can tell right now we're doing it safely. Arlington is doing it right now. A lot of it has to do with vaccines. Vaccines were the game changer. We probably could have gone back in late last year, but the vaccines weren't there for that cohort between 18 and 12. And that with vaccine, though, for them is the difference maker. Everyone's back in school, and that's the thing that I have to remind them, is that if you have a Governor Youngkin, he's going to take away the mask mandate that we're having in schools. And you think you're seeing spread right now in communities, you wait until that happens. And right now, as we speak, there's kids under 12 years old being intubated at Nova Fairfax Hospital. And people, when they see that, they change their tune when it comes to mask mandates and vaccine mandates. And that's the kind of scenario that we don't want to repeat here in Virginia. We don't want to be like Florida and Texas.
Amen.
Patricia McGrady.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Pat.
I have my two of my pet issues. I wonder what you think will happen in the future. One is national popular vote, and the other is medical assistance in dying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll take the popular vote. That's something we passed in the House, and it didn't pass the Senate. I think they're going to need a little bit more time I don't know if the politics for them have changed, and I don't exactly understand their reasoning for opposing it. But I do think that it will come back, and I do think that when it does, it'll pass the House. I just don't know what the Senate will do with it. You know, it's interesting. You know, a lot of things that we've brought up here, and Rip fielded a couple questions about it too, is where the Senate either waters down bills or they kill them. You know, they're in a different place than we are because they run every 4 years instead of every 2 years. But at some point, they're going to start be thinking about reelection, and you start thinking about that as you get in 2 years or so. So I think that a lot of these issues that that they felt one way, as we get closer to their reelection, they're going to feel another way, and they got to hear from voters in order to do it. The medical aid and dying bill, which is also very important to me. I've talked about this. The Joint Commission on Healthcare has opined on it many years ago. I think that what we're going to need there is to do more education because not all Democrats support it. Part of the problem, Pat, with that issue is that the disability community is lined up in opposition to it. And I think what we need to do is get everyone into a room to sort of understand what we're trying to do here. Make sure that we have the legal guardrails in place to avoid any concern that they might have and give them some assurances that what they think could happen won't happen and mitigate those concerns. I think that we can get something passed. I think probably the best way to do that, God willing, if we hold on to the House this time, I think this could be a 2-year cycle, 2-year bill, I would say, whereas in this first year we do a study and get everyone into the room, and we'll be ready to pass it in 2023. That's what I hope that we can do. I don't think it'll pass this coming year. I don't think we've created the sense of urgency or laid the groundwork necessary, but we do have the people in place that will pass it. Make no mistake, this won't pass unless it's a Democratic majority.
One final question. Who has a question? Herschel.
Well, this is sort of a comment that Patrick can then comment on. A lot of the things that passed during this 2 sessions, people said those are really too liberal for Virginia. But if the Republicans really believe that, those issues would be in their ads. So I suspect the Republicans really believe that those things weren't too liberal for Virginia. So, for example, the death penalty. So
yeah, I think what they'll do, Herschel, is they'll sort of categorize these things as saying that we're anti-police and pro-victim, or rather pro-criminal than anything else. I mean, they've already started to characterize as that way. They're going to be they're going to sort of talk about it generally, you know, how we are for more people to be paroled and we're less in favor of what the victims' families have to say. So I think they'll be couching it that way rather than talking about specific issues. I think you've already seen that in the Attorney General's race to make that an issue there. I think that you know they're going to say that we want to take your guns away, whereas they won't talk about background checks, which polls very highly. They'll just categorize it by saying we want to take away your guns, and we want to kill babies, and they'll categorize that by, you know, based on how we've done on some of the choice bills. So that's how they've operated. That's their playbook, and I suspect that that's what we'll see as things really start to heat up.
Patrick, do you want to summarize and remind us where your website is and how people can donate to your campaign and so on?
Yeah, really quickly, you can do it all on the website. It's hopeforvirginia.org. And you know, I appreciate your support over the years. It's a privilege to be representing Arlington, the 47th district, and I hope my district stays the same. We'll see what happens with redistricting, but anyway, it's just such an honor to represent the Arlington community. You've given me so much latitude to take charge of some of these progressive issues, and I want to thank you for that. I have to go, but thanks again, Bob. Thanks everyone.
Thank you for coming, Patrick.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, so what I want to do for just a minute here is to share my screen and give you a very quick orientation to the bond referenda that are on the ballots. And there's a lot of different borrowing for a lot of different things. As you know, under the Virginia state constitution, before localities can borrow money under their credit, they have to get permission from the voters. And so just about every election cycle, certainly in the even number years or years when we think we're gonna have a big turnout, we have these bond referenda put on the ballot. And sometimes we've had as many as 6, but we happen to have them in 4 buckets this year. The first bucket combines both the metro and transportation, and it is for $38 million. And the idea behind this is that when Metro makes capital investments, they parse it out to the member jurisdictions, and then it's up to us to finance that. So Metro is spending this money on upkeep and expansion, and we have to fund our share. And so $20 million is going to pay Metro, and the other 17.5 is to do streets and roadways, bridges, that sort of thing. The second referenda is Parks and Recreation, and that's just $6.8 million, of which $5 million is for the tennis complex here at Bluemont Park, and 0.8 is for the boathouse. The other million is for trail modernization. The next one is $17 million for community infrastructure, and this includes different capital projects, improvements, and redevelopment. And the final one for $23 million is for the schools. And unlike the other bond issues, we actually have a formal school bond political committee, and we have the 2 co-chairs, Rebecca Hunter and Alistair Watson, and they're both here to talk to us, and we'll let them talk, and then I'm sure they'll take our questions. And again, this is $23 million. The total package is $68 million, which is consistent with what we can borrow to maintain our AAA bond rating with the 3 different agencies. So this is part of our long-term plan, but I turn it over first to Alistair to present for the school bonds.
Good afternoon, Arlington Democrats. I was born and raised here. I was born and raised in the Aurora Highlands neighborhood on the corner of 23rd and Joyce, and I just wanted to say it's lovely seeing so many familiar faces. Stuart and I actually, wait, is Stuart not here anymore? I think Stuart left, but Stuart and I work on Eco Action Arlington, as well as Paula Theed. We do, I've seen her a lot in the Eco Action Arlington environment. Also Mark Teal, obviously, Arlington parent, and has helped out a lot with the yard signs. And Max Stern, Margot Horner, Joan, Herschel Cantor from the Civic Federation, and Patricia, I think we actually we were on a Fair Vote Virginia call in February several months ago, like a volunteer call on Sunday. Do you remember that? I think we were on that together.
Yeah, that may be. Yeah, I had forgotten. Right. Yep.
Well, it's good to see you again. And if I missed anyone, sorry. So I'm a graduate of the Arlington Public School Systems. I went to Claremont Elementary, where I graduated in 2010. Then I went to Gunston Middle School, where I graduated in 2014, and then Wakefield High School, where I graduated in 2018. And I was really honored to be reached out to. It was completely unexpected by the school board to ask me to co-chair this bond campaign. But when I read more about it, where this $23 million is going, I was thrilled to help out support it. And I'm here to talk and add on to Bob's great summary and also take your questions. So $23 million is a lot of money. And I know that all of you are very engaged and concerned Arlingtonians. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that, Joe, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. If you guys have any questions, you can interrupt me at any time. We don't have to do questions at the end. That's my style. And I know that you guys are concerned about where this money is going. I can assure you, as you probably already know, Arlington has a AAA bond rating. So we are trusted year after year with bonds. And actually, for most election cycles, we've had bonds on the ballot. And indeed, the last one to fail was in 1975. So generally, Arlingtonians, not just Democrats, are very supportive of where this money is going. In fact, the Arlington Democratic Committee, and on August 4th, as you probably know, passed a resolution in support of the school bond, the $23 million school bond. Now, into the fun stuff. Where's this money going? So this 10.65 million of this 23.01 million will go into kitchen renovations at 8 schools. This will make sure that the kitchens meet the National School Lunch Program requirements. And this includes the ability to have more than one line so that the food can be served quicker. You guys all know when the bell rings, I mean, come on, let's be honest. When the bell rings, everyone runs to the to the cafeteria, right? And if it's one line, it can sometimes go all the way out the door. And there are some schools that actually just have one line, like at Randolph Elementary. So having two lines or more actually cuts it in half so that people have more time to eat, and it's healthier to eat slow. In addition, the National School Lunch Program requirements includes on-site food storage and prep. So this is actually something that I learned through this process, is that there's actually a fair bit amount of cooking that goes on during the preparation for school lunch. And a lot of the staffers, they need ovens or tabletop or stovetop and so on and so forth. Then the second largest amount of money is 11.39, which is going to go to the Heights building to provide better accessibility for Shriver students. I know that this has been going on for years. We've all been following it since day one, but hopefully this is the plan to really finish the Shriver program. And a lot of parents and students are really excited for what that accessibility at the Shriver for Shriver students will, help the wheelchair-bound students or students who require other mobility devices. And then finally, $970,000 will go to entrance renovations and security vegetables. Not vegetables. I cannot say. Can someone help me with that word, Bob? Vegetables? Vestibules. Thank you. Good thing I'm starting with you guys. At 10 schools to meet current safety and security standards. So just to go into a brief explanation, at a lot of schools, when visitors come through the front entrance, they're actually not immediately gestured to go into the front office. I know at Wakefield, the front office was to the side and to the back of the main front doors. So there were visitors who walked in and either were lost or potentially could walk in with a nefarious attempt and bypass the initial line of security. And we all know in the news, there is a lot of people who have mental health issues, and they do a school shooting or school shooting with a subsidiary suicide in order to express their anger and hatred in the world. And those are stopped at the door. That's the best way to stop the school shooters. And just under $1 million will go to help gesture. Every single person who is a visitor has to go to the main office so they can get a preliminary check from the staffers. So I'm here now to take Q&A, and also my lovely treasurer, Bob, can also add on anything. And my lovely co-chair, Rebecca, if you're on the call, I yield the floor to you.
I think she left, but she was on for very patiently. She sat through all of Patrick Hope, and then I think she probably had to drop off due to her job duties, and I apologize for her, but she's a very wonderful advocate for the schools. I will take this opportunity before we take questions to insert a brief commercial announcement, which is we are a separate campaign committee, not part of the joint campaign. We're funded by individual donations. So if the people on this call could send us a check for any amount, it would be most appreciated. And I'm the treasurer, so you can just mail it to me at 1300 Army Navy Drive, payable to support the school bond. And we could really use the money. There's a lot of campaign signs that get lost every year. So this funds the purchase of campaign signs so that Mark Teal and the crew can stick them in the median strips. So again, it's support the school bonds and bond, and mail it to me at 1300 Army Navy Drive, number 209, Arlington, Virginia 22202. Okay, so questions from the crew here in the audience. Someone just unmute yourself if you have a question. It's again, we have to get a majority of those voting to approve in order to spend this money. And interest rates are at a historic low, so now's the time to borrow. We have a lot of important things to do. Derek, you have the floor.
Yeah. Oh, Bob, I just wanted to ask, it's not about the school bond issue. It was actually about the third issue. You talked about development. What is that third bond issue? Could you elaborate a little more on what that third bond issue is, the one before the school board?
Yes.
I think it has to do with development, you said?
No, it's the community infrastructure. And this is $17 million. And it's going to be for the courthouse renovations, capital projects, and $1.8 million for the courthouse building itself, and for what they call community redevelopment, $700,000. That's typically things like traffic calming devices, curb sidewalks, replacement, that sort of thing. So there's a whole rigorous process for coming up with grant applications from the local civic associations, and they say we need new curbs and gutters on such and such a street, and then there's a process for awarding that.
That's probably the neighborhood advisory committee, I assume. I think all that goes through them.
Yeah.
But okay,
exactly.
thank you, Bob.
Sure. That's a fair question. Any other questions? Okay, well, again, we want you to support all the bond issues. All four have been endorsed by ACDC, and I do not know of any organized opposition to any of them this year. I've been doing this for decades, and there always seems to be one that they pick on. One year it's the park bond, last year it was the school bond, and the forces of fiscal conservatism sort of pick one bond issue to pick on, and then go from there. And I think most of the votes against the bond issue for schools last year was associated with the concern that the schools be reopened quickly and so on. I don't think that's the case this year. And you again, send me your checks if you have a few spare dollars you can scrape up. We'd love to have the money. And if there's nothing further, I think we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you for your careful attention, and we'll see you the second week in October. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Bob.